Okay, so this episode, I'm going to be talking about a couple of things. I want to talk about role models, how you build confidence, what confidence looks like, and also some mental strength. The mental strength side of things is based probably more predominantly around mental health and what we perceive mental health to be, and maybe even changing the narrative for yourself on what you see your mental health as. So I'm going to go into these topics. These are from my own experiences. This is from sort of my own professional experience and also the expertise that I have in dealing with athletes and just people in general on a day-to-day basis, whether that's looking after their bodies or their minds. So role models for me is something that I used heavily growing up, going into professional sport. I saw role models in TV adverts that I would have put in front of me. So I think one of the big markers for me was Adidas ran an Impossible is Nothing campaign, and that was a big catalyst for me in improving the way I did things in order to become a professional sportsman. Now I looked at it and it was people like Muhammad Ali, it was Jonah Lomu, it was definitely in that campaign. Lionel Messi was there, David Beckham was one of them. And once I started getting these role models, these icons, started delving further into their stories. Then you're going into people like Roger Federer, Tiger Woods, and delving deeper into how they became so good at what they did. And it wasn't until sort of after my career or further down later stages of my career that I realized that my role models, it wasn't necessarily the sport in which they pursued and what they were doing. It was how they were doing it. It was what they were doing, the little acts of drive, persistence, the actual training that they were doing. And that was the stuff that really interested me. And I kept looking at and how I could implement that into my training and what I could do. So looking at my role models, I actually tell a funny story in talks that I give about how two of my role models growing up were Lance Armstrong and Oscar Pistorius. Now, as the world has transpired, not two great role models to have. I actually challenge a little bit the Oscar Pistorius one. Nothing with Lance Armstrong, nothing forgives the cheating scandal, the drug taking, and it really marred that whole role model that I had growing up of him overcoming. I mean, he overcame cancer, but then to do that in his sport, which I was aiming for a high elite sport, and to see someone achieve that and aspire to being that great, to then only find that it was through cheating, that completely destroyed it for me. The Oscar Pistorius one, for me, I saw a guy with no legs running against people with legs, and just taking his whole story outside of what he did in his personal life, taking the story of him achieving that goal, achieving that ability to run with people with legs. It was just such a powerful message when I saw it, and I thought that was something really worthwhile looking into and aspiring to, literally seeing someone running without legs against people with legs. So that was just a bit of motivation and two role models that I had. And those were not two role models that I threw everything around. There were people like Johnny Wilkinson, the way he trained in rugby. And quite funny enough, there weren't that many people in the sport that I was playing that I used as role models. There were people that I took from technical advice from. So I had a guy that was playing for the club that I played for, was a senior player, and I would look at what he did. I would look at the techniques that he had and how I could use that for he was a similar player to me, he was a similar skill set, and I would watch what he did and took advice and looked at his technique and his training methods and how I could maybe implement that into me, or even better it and try and do things differently. I also looked at players who didn't have my skill sets, so I was a bowler, and then I would look at batters and see what they were doing. And there were a lot of players that I was aspiring to be like, ended up playing with them as teammates, and seeing them train in their environments, I would implement some of their ways in which they would train into what I was doing. So my role models have changed, and they do change quite drastically, like over time. And I think that's a thing that I would mention, is that your role models do change. However, looking at role models and looking at them as these people which you can take parts of what they do, you don't necessarily have to take all of what they do, and selecting your role models depending on what it is you're specifically taking from that individual. So knowing that is that role model you're taking a part, because as much as you're aspiring to for a role model for advice and guidance, you don't want to be them. You want to be the best version of yourself. So you want to do your sport, your activity, your high performance, your job, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to make sure that you're doing it to the best of your ability, and you're doing it in your own unique way. And a role model is merely a pathway, a guidance of how you might get there, how someone else has done it, and not only as the motivation of has someone been through similar things to you and got there, so that gives you the motivation to do it, but also how they did it, and taking a little bits of those information, the bits of information, and adding it into what you do. So your role models are going to change. They're going to be different people to, or they might be doing a completely different discipline to you, but seeing if there's something that you admire about that person, and what is it that you admire? What is it that you could maybe add into to what you're doing and how you're doing it, to make yourself better. And I think looking at yourself as a role model as well, I would look at my own personal journey and my own personal self, my being essentially, and that has stemmed from me carving out the person that I want to be. So looking at who am I a role model that I would look up to? Am I a person that I would look up to if I was now the 15-year-old version of me? So once you have an end result of the person you want to be and the role model, the type of person you want to be, then you can kind of work back from there. You can start to look at, okay, does this person train on this day? Does this person read more? Does this person exercise more? What does this person eat? Or how do they behave? What are the words they use? Do they always look at the glass half full or half empty? Or what are the actions that you want that person to be? Now, that takes a little bit of work on looking at the type of person you want to be. And again, it's very hard to to look at yourself and not try and put someone else's traits in. So you might say, yes, I want to be driven, but I want to be driven like Tiger Woods was driven. So it's being driven in your own unique way, because your own journey is going to be different. Your own environment is going to be different to everyone else. So looking at what you can do and in the parameters of your own environment and everything that you're doing, how can you be that person that you want to be with the tools that you have and everything around you? So looking at yourself as being your own role model, and inadvertently you're going to end up being that person that will inspire others in trying to become a role model for others. So I take pride in the fact that I can be a role model for others because of the role model that I've set for myself, which is to be this type of person, and taking, like I said, all these different elements from other people, other role models that I've had. It might be the way in which they deal with their personal life. It might be the way in which they deal with their professional life. It might be the way in which they do a skill or their training program for running or something like that. And it could be something that you just take from loads of different people, and then it culminates into you finding your own individual way of being a role model for both yourself and other people. And now looking at me working with younger people, if I'm looking for someone to lead, if I'm looking for someone to be a role model, you want them to lead by being the role model that you want them to be. So that means that if they're leading themselves in the correct way and they're being that role model, then they're going to lead other people by default, because people will strive for that person who is just that little bit better, that little bit whether they register that straight away or not, they will look for that person that is just doing something that little bit better, that little bit different, and that will end up leading people. So if you want to be a leader, lead yourself, lead others by, first of all, looking after your own house, creating that structure of a role model, and becoming that person you want to be. So I would advise a little activity that you can do. It's something that I have done in the past, and that's writing about yourself, being honest, and writing about what it is, the things that you do now. So what are the things that you do now on a day-to-day basis? How do you live your life? What time do you get up? What foods do you eat? What habits do you have? And then write down the person you want to become. So flip the page over, start fresh, and then write down those traits of the person that you want to become, the role model that you potentially want to become. Now, when you're going and looking at yourself and being very honest about yourself, this is a painful exercise. This is something that is not pleasant to do, because you are looking at yourself and you're not giving yourself excuses. So you are, like for me, example, I am in a period right now where I'm not getting up when I want to be getting up in the morning. I might say that I want to get up at 6:30 in the morning, but I'm actually getting up at 7:30. So that is something that I don't want to be doing, because I'm looking into multiple sides of that. Is that the way I'm sleeping, whatever? But the habits that I want to create, the person that I want to become, or even actually sleeping, I wouldn't even use that one as an example. I would say like the training that I want to be doing right now, for example. So I'm moving between different parts of training. So I'm looking at doing more running-based training at the moment. And I'm not training at the level I want to train at. Now, I then start to undo that. Why am I not training like that? Is that because I'm not eating the right foods? If I'm not eating the right foods, can I be in more control of that? Am I getting the right amount of sleep? All these different things. So simply by looking at this one little element of I'm not training the way I want to be training, and then I can unpack it and find out the things that I need to do on that flip side of the page, which is the person that I want to become. And it is an ugly process. So looking at yourself through this mirror and finding out what is it you do now, almost looking at yourself through the eyes of a stranger. I think it's sometimes, and that can even be a great way of doing it, by finding someone else that you trust, you value their opinion, and getting them to write about you, basically, and ask them to be brutal, but realize that it's not both for yourself and from the other person. It's to make you better. It's to make you the person that you want to become. And not only that, you might be doing some things already that you want to be doing. So don't forget about that. So it's very easy to look at the things that you're not doing. So look at the things that you are doing that are, even by simply doing this process, by sitting down and writing, that's a driven process. So that's a great tick already. Sitting down and writing out about improving yourself, that is a driven tick, because you want to get better. So that's a big tick in the box for becoming a part of a motivated, driven person who is looking to progress. So I encourage you to try that activity. Sit down, write about yourself. What is it that you're doing now? The habits that you are fundamentally doing. Don't lie about it. Don't cheat yourself. Put it down on paper, look at it, step back, maybe walk away for 5 minutes, come back, read it, and then flip that page over and write about the person that you want to become. And from there, you might be starting to see some things that you can change. So if it's, I get up too late, I do get up too late, and I don't get up early enough. Can you change it by 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and slowly start to build that back to where you want to get to? And you can put in an actionable step the next day. Don't try to shoot for the stars and go to the end result first. Work it over a 4-week period and just incrementally get better over time. So I encourage you to give that a goal. Have a look at your role models. Become the role model that you want to become, and write down that person that you are currently now and where you want to be. The next topic I got written down on my notes is about confidence. And I think confidence is something that we see in the world, where we either have really low self-confidence, or we might even see people who have this false confidence. And for me, being confident is when you can quietly go about your business, and you have this quiet inner belief that even if people are watching, even if you are stripped down to the bare bones of what it is you're trying to do, you can fundamentally do it under pressure. And that could be a skill, that could be giving a presentation, that could be getting up and speaking in public. And the confidence that you have comes from repetition of training, failing, and trying again. And that confidence doesn't just come straight away. So you're looking at, if I'm putting this into a skill-based, or if I'm putting this into a sporting context, you don't get confident straight away in learning a new skill. So if you're learning how to play a forehand in tennis, and you're first holding the racket, you may not even be holding the racket right. So you may not be confident in how you're holding the racket. And then when you play that forehand and you get it right the first time, that's cool. But if we put you under pressure and we put you up against an opponent, we have people watching, you're probably not going to be that confident in it, having only done it a few times. Whereas the training that happens over a period of weeks, months, years, you continuously practice, and all of that training is a part of doing it, failing, pushing it, taking it to a further limit. And then eventually you'll be confident enough with that forehand that it should get to a point where it doesn't really matter that those people are watching. You feel confident enough to succeed in it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect every time. It doesn't mean that you're going to succeed at something every time, but your percentages of getting better at it just start to go up. So again, I loved I think it was a quote from Alex Honnold in Free Solo, the documentary Free Solo. It was a really good quote that he said, and he would talk about how he would go over his route up El Capitan, and he was climbing up El Capitan. If none of you have watched Free Solo, I recommend you watching that documentary. Alex Honnold, incredible climber, and he's climbing up El Capitan, an 800-meter cliff face with no rope. And the way he did it was he would map out the route up to the top. And his repetition in his mind was every move that he would make, the meticulous movements of his hands, his feet, his legs, his arms, and everything. He would go over it and over and over and repeat it. And he said that he then would be so confident in those movements that it didn't matter that if he was to do that entire climb in a stadium full of 80,000 people, it wasn't a case of, oh, I hope this works. It was a case of turning around to 80,000 people and saying, watch this. And then he's confident in what he can do. That for me just really summed up what confidence can really look like. It is your trust in the training that you've done, in the amount of times you've done something, the experiences you've had, and the learning you've gained from it that allows you to build this inner confidence within yourself. Now, false confidence that I mentioned would look something like you've trained, but you maybe haven't trained to that level. And you can kind of get away with some false confidence in some respect, but you can't get away with it all the time. Like I said, the end goal is to have that percentages of success go up. So you might get away with it for a bit, but eventually you will get found out. And your confidence will come from that ability to just repeat, and fail. Failure is a huge part of that. That in order to grow at something, you have to fail at it. And even failing, that repetition of failure, you learn from what the possibilities of something going wrong are. So you learn again and again and again, and you start to build a better library of understanding of yourself. You build this bank of experience that you have, and you can call upon it whenever you need it. And if you then go into an environment where potentially it's a nerve-wracking experience and you become nervous, confidence just allows you to deal with that nervous experience, that pressured situation that bit better. It doesn't get rid of nerves. It won't completely quash nerves. And I've spoken about nerves before, where you will become nervous no matter what, but it's just about the level of those nerves. So having that confidence just keeps your level of nerves at a lower level and allows you to perform your skill, your performance, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, to the best of your ability. And building that confidence is probably the biggest thing that I see in working with younger people, especially. We live in a world where we obviously have elements around us where we're being bombarded with messages of we need to be like this and we need to be better, And you can then look at yourself and think of yourself as inadequate in the scheme of things. But confidence is a journey. Confidence, again, like I said, it's never you start on day one and you are confident at something. You can be enthusiastic and passionate from day one, and that can help you. But confidence is when, again, you're put under scrutiny and pressure, and can you still be confident in what you're doing? So when you start out, you're fresh, and it's the beginning of that journey. So understanding where you are in that journey, and are you hiding from experiences that are potentially going to knock your confidence at the moment, or do you reframe how you see that failure, that knockback, as a moment to just strengthen your confidence, because it's an opportunity to strengthen your confidence. You can learn from it. You can understand why that happened, so that's an experience. That's an experience that's put in your bank of experience that, again, when you come up against that before, again, you have an understanding of what it potentially, how you get around it, how you deal with it. And again, you're looking at sort of how you debrief, but like how you assess every situation you have. So even if you fail at something and it does knock your confidence and you feel like you're low in self-confidence, I urge you to just have a look at when you've been confident. Think of moments when you've been confident. Now, this could be at home, it could be at school, it could be on a field, it could be in practice, it could be in your work, anywhere when you feel like that was me confident, that was me being confident. And reflect on it. Look back at what it was that you think that made you confident in that moment. What did you look like? When I'm personally low on self-confidence, I think of moments when I was confident. And I use affirmations quite a lot. So I will find I will even use the phrase, I am confident, as an affirmation. However, it doesn't really mean anything unless I stick it to a emotion, or I stick it to a feeling of what it looked like. So I look at moments in which I was confident. I look for these areas in which I was confident and times in which I was at my best self-confidence. And I visualize that moment in my mind, and then I repeat the phrase, I'm confident, because I'm now linking the word confidence, and my mind is linking the word confidence to that visualization, so that I'm then, whether it's a physical how I look physically, is it with my shoulders back, my chest up, am I loud, am I engaged, so that I know if I'm lacking in confidence, that's something that I'm trying to aim for, that's a person I'm trying to aim to get to. So if I know that a confident version of me is loud and engaging, and I'm quiet at the time that something is happening, and I'm reserved, then I've got to try and bring myself into engaging with someone. And the first step might be having a laugh and a joke with someone. It might be just engaging with them really quickly to sort of kickstart that confidence in me, to get my physical self up and running. But again, I then would look at, if I'm not confident, is it my preparation that I'm doing? I take a lot of confidence from my preparation. So if I'm giving a talk, for example, and I've spoken about this before, where if I'm giving a presentation, I actually just stand in my room and give the talk straight away. I set up it could be a teddy bear on the table, on the bed, and I'm giving that talk as if that teddy bear is 1,000 or 2,000 people, right? And I've done talks before where I've just done it into a mirror, I've done it into a wardrobe, I've done it into a bookcase, where I'm just literally presenting this talk or this seminar to that wherever I'm at. And I'm in private, so I'm doing it in private, so I don't have anyone watching. I might video it so I can look at it. That's an uncomfortable thing to do, but it's a brilliant thing to do. And the confidence that I gain is because I've actually gone and done it. I've said the words, I've done the movements, the phrases, what I want to do, and I can look back at it, reflect. But the gain that I get from it is actually having done it. I have feeling confident that I've practiced, I'm prepared, so that when I get to the day where I'm actually giving the presentation or the talk, yes, I feel nervous. Yes, there's that heart rate goes up, palms start sweating, but I can actually remember that I've prepared, and I feel confident that I'm prepared and I'm ready to go. So your preparation is a huge part of gaining your confidence. Have a look at how you're preparing. Are you preparing in a good enough way? Are you kidding yourself? Do you have this false confidence in the way you prepare? And that is something that you can really fall back on. Even if you you look at like the most extreme versions of training, sort of in the SAS, they talk about their training being the one thing that they fall back on in pressured situations to be confident that they're making the right decision. And it all goes back to their training, the process of their training and their preparation that they've had. They've had the training, doesn't change the environment they get into, but they have had the training, they back the training that they've done, and they do it. It's the same in sport, and anyone that's a high performer, you just back your training and your preparation to give you that confidence to perform under pressure. So have a look at your preparation, have a look at the way in which you are when you're confident, and is that something that you can visualize and use to physically get yourself going to how you want to be, and just implement and play around with it, and realize that failing and not succeeding is an opportunity to grow. And I guess it's a very overused way of saying things. That yes, you fail and it's an opportunity to grow, but it is so true that with that opportunity is just putting that bank of experience and repetition in failing and overcoming, and then building that confidence so that when you do have this pressurized situation, or you do want to do something that is a little bit harder, you can turn around to someone and go, watch this. My final note is on mental strength, and I was recently talking to someone about mental health, and I think this is something that comes from a lot of men that I speak to, especially in sport and in general, that when we talk about mental health, we talk about mental health being this illness. It comes in generally a negative connotation. And I think when a lot of guys hear mental health, they think I'm broken and yeah, I'm weak and I'm ill. And I would actually then like to try and change this narrative to building mental strength. And we look at our mental strength. Now, an analogy I would give to people is when you hurt your knee, you might injure your knee. You say, well, how did you hurt your knee? Well, I had an injury and I tripped, fell, I did something to my knee. Okay, so your knee is now what is injured, and what do you have to do? Well, I have to now get my knee stronger. I now have to build it back up through strength training so that it doesn't happen again. Oh, so your knee is weak. Well, yeah, my knee is injured, but it's weak now, but I'm going to build it up to be stronger. And that physical way we look at our bodies is no different from our minds. If we suffer a trauma or an experience that negatively affects us, it does knock us back, it does injure us a little bit, but building that strength up is through repetition of strength training, through training our minds and building our experiences. It's just the way we're phrasing it. So looking at our mental health, that's mental strength. And this is something that I'm really passionate about with working with people on. We talk about when we go into a workout in the gym, we talk about going to failure. Now, why the hell would we go to failure? We don't like failure. Why would we even? Failure is something we should. A lot of people feel they should shy away from. But no, in the gym, push your muscles, go to failure. Why do we go to failure? Well, because we know that when we go to failure, we start to break down the muscle so that it can build stronger and repair. So we're going to failure. It means we're actually striving for failure. That's something that I think we don't recognize with our minds, that we can push our minds to failure, yes, but that's where we start to grow. That's where we start to get better. That's where we start to strengthen. And if we do not push our minds towards the idea of failing or sort of this breaking, I say breaking in a very broad sense. That it's not breaking, but it is this failure. And then when you get there, that's where you start to learn and you start to build that mental muscle, and you become stronger because you've gone to that level, you've gone to that failure. The same way as if you start to lift heavier weights, you've actually experienced it, you've gone to it, so your body starts to grow and adapt so that you can do it again and again and again. And that's the whole idea of how the body works, and the mind works the exact same way. We just treat it differently. So I challenge people to treat your mind in the same way that you would treat your body, by looking at it as, I'm pushing my mind and I failed. oh, that's frustrating, yes, but I've pushed it to a place where I know I'm going to get stronger, so I can even try that again. I'm willing to step in and do that again. And I use a meditation. I've put this meditation on YouTube. It's under meditation for athletes. If you type in sport yogi meditation for athletes, it's a 10-minute meditation, and it's about you look at the idea of sitting down for meditation is painful and ugly for some people because you have too many thoughts coming in, but that's the good stuff. That's what you're looking for. So you start the meditation for centering yourself where you have an anchor point, and your anchor point is your breath. And I think it's your breath in this meditation. So your focus point is on your breath. So if you lose your concentration, if your mind gets lost in thought, you just try to bring yourself back to the breath. Now, every time that you lose your train of thought, your focus, and then you bring it back to your breath and you recenter and you refocus, that's one repetition of your mind. That is a repetition of mental strength to pull yourself away from something that is not what you should be focusing on to what you should be focusing on. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't become distracted again, because you surely will, and bang, you lose your concentration. You start thinking about what's going on outside, what's the temperature, the sensations you feel. Oh, I've lost my train of thought. I come back to that idea of the breath. And that's another repetition. So now we're starting to do reps. Now we're building that strength. And your ability to do that more often than not, and not get lost in thought, not get lost in this distraction that's going on, and come back, builds your mental strength and your mental ability to focus, to strengthen in periods of kind of confusion of thought, lost in thought and distraction, and so that you can come back. So I would try and maybe look up that YouTube video if you can. Go take a look at it. It's something that I think is just a way in which we can view our mental health slightly differently. Again, looking at it as mental strength, we're building our mental strength. And it's definitely a better analogy for me personally, because I can now see the challenges I face as moments to grow and to strengthen my mind even further. So give that a go, try it out and see what you think. So that's all I've really got for this episode. I think the one thing I would note on this episode, just one little thing that I've just kind of seen written down, would be to note that everyone that's ever experienced a painful situation or a knock of confidence, a knock of self-doubt, a knock of their mental, physical ability, has always spoken about how that experience taught them, how that experience, they learned from that experience. And whether that's someone who is an elite athlete, an elite performer, a businessman, but always they learn from their failings. So understanding that when you do have a failure, you do have a setback, that it is an opportunity to learn. And I will continuously try to reiterate this in whether it's my podcast, my social media, my talks. Learning from that experience and understanding how you can grow from it is everything about becoming even better and sending yourself up in progress, progressing yourself and sending yourself up the ladder to where you want to try and achieve yourself. And you're always moving that marker, you're always moving that and adapting the person you want to be and who you want to become. But a part of that process is failing, coming back down, learning from it, going back up, and understanding where you are in that process. Enjoy that process, because it's one hell of a journey, and it will always be there. The failings and the experiences will always be there. So learn to try and embrace them and see them as brilliant opportunities.